Isis Mussenden, costume designer for Wheel of Time, set in a high fantasy world where magic exists, but only some can access it. A woman named Moraine crosses paths with five young men and women. This sparks a dangerous, world-spanning journey. It's coming to Amazon Prime Video in November here. It's obviously based on an incredibly popular book series. Isis, what was your experience like coming in? Were you aware of the books, and like where did you start, I guess?
No, I wasn't aware of the books at all. And I actually, when I got the scripts and went in for the interview, I said, I cannot make sense of any of this right now. So let's just talk about the way I work, because it was so difficult and in depth. And I couldn't even pronounce the names of 50% of the characters. And nobody can. As everybody came into the show, after me, each person, we had like a little tutorial on how to even pronounce most of the names in the story. But I was lucky enough that when I got the job, I had a crash course from a super fan, Sarah Nakamura, who is our researcher and our everything that anybody needs to know about Wheel of Time. So she sat down with me, and I had several sessions. It was like a little, crash course in Wheel of Time, so that I could absorb it quickly, because there are 13 books and there was no time to read it. But also, as others have said today, it is the script that we're shooting that we need to design. So I became the audience that doesn't know the books. And that needs to make sense too. Those scripts need to make sense. So no, I did not know the books.
No, that's really fascinating. I think that makes probably, like, I think we've talked about in other rooms of these too. Like it gives you a different perspective that I think maybe helps, especially like with the creativity of the costumes and the originality, I guess, and what you're trying to do.
Yes. I mean, it's nice you need the references, because we also, we have to honor the story. Our showrunner, Rafe Judkins, is brilliant. He knows the stories inside out. So he knew where we wanted to push and make sure we gave a nod to the story and to the fans. And he knew where it wasn't as important for him. So he was my barometer in that way. Otherwise, he just kind of let me go. And I designed to service the story. I designed to service the characters. But conceptually, it was quite intense at the beginning, because I really just needed to get a grasp of this world. Because if I don't understand the world, I can't live in the world. And I did, break it down between the Ajas and the channeling and the Aes Sedai and the cultures and the tribes and the armies. And we started with a map that we created ourselves. My design assistant, Gypsy Taylor, brilliant, drew it up, and we color coded it because we're dyslexic and we need color. And, we had to do that ourselves so that we could so we could live in this world for the next 2 years, basically.
Yeah, it's wild. I was going to ask you about the length of time. It is such a long production, the 2 years. It is fascinating.
I think everybody here today, the COVID situation, we did have 2 stops, and it took us, 2 years and 2 weeks to shoot 8 episodes because of COVID. And because, also it was a massive undertaking.
It really is a massive show. I think that's like apparent from like when you watch like the first episode. It's just like so big. I guess, I've seen people like, obviously like comp points for the books and like maybe like a Lord of the Rings or a Game of Thrones. But I think the big difference from this show is that it is like, if not a matriarchal society, largely, like obviously like women have such power in this society that's in the show. And I think getting to see that as in the fantasy genre is unique. And I guess, how did you make that work in the costumes, and how did that change like how you kind of costumed a lot of these characters?
Well, the women are very strong, and it's a matriarchal society. They can channel. They are the only ones that are allowed to channel, but they also are not princesses. These women are working women. The women of the White Tower, the 7 Ajas, which is 7 colors of the shawl. So there are definitely things from the book. There are definite clues that I needed to follow. So in designing these women, we started shooting in another place, so we had a little time to kind of sneak into who these women were. And at first, I really did think that they were going to be more like princesses, or more stylized in a way. But the color itself, these 7 colors that we were bound by, was enough. Believe me. I mean, they're not easy. And if you think of a lot of these fantasy and medieval shows, they're very brown or dark or monotone or sepia, beautiful. That's not our show, because we have 7 colors. We have cultures, everything from the white cloaks who are completely white to the tinkers who have multicolors and pinks and textures and patterns and all of that. So that's one big difference of our show, is that we have a lot of color, which is, fine by me. I love working in color. We had a lot of textile. I had a beautiful textile design team who worked with me to create and to control all that. So it's a build show. I mean, you can't go to the store and buy fantasy or go to the costume shop and pull it. That's kind of where we are with that.
Yeah, you talked earlier, and I think I saw you. I watched an interview you did for Chronicles of Narnia, which I know you worked on the costumes for that, and you talked about how it's the relation between the actors and the costume designer is so intertwined, and that you're trying to tell the story through the character. And can you talk a little about working with Rosamund in this, and how you got for Moiraine, what were your conversations were like, and how you kind of wanted to make that her look, while obviously, like you said, paying fidelity to the source, but how you kind of wanted to imagine that and envision that with her, I guess.
Sure. First of all, I was lucky enough to be working with Rosamund Pike. I mean, she is a fashion icon. She's also a brilliant actress. And so what we're trying to do in the fitting room always is find the character. It is always about the character. You find a good actor is talking about character. They're not talking about themselves. So she was a brilliant collaborator, and I really respect her opinion. And I think together we worked really well to find that higher ground of Moiraine's look. Moiraine her character is of the Blue Aja, which is the investigators. And we find her at the beginning. We start at the beginning with her a long journey. She's already been on a long journey. We come into the story after a long journey in the process. And so there's a reality we wanted to lay there. That was kind of what I was speaking of, with these girls aren't princesses. They're working, they're hardworking, and they're really trying to make the world and keep the world safe and better. So we needed to honor her blue. And I went and found the first thing that came to my mind when I started working on her costumes was Picasso's blue period paintings, because they are so stunning and beautiful. I saw them in person in Barcelona years ago, and I never could get them out of my head. So we pulled up the paintings and we laid them out. We printed them out in high res. We started pulling blues. If it works in the painting, it's going to work on the body. If the scale of this light blue to this dark blue to this pattern works, then it's going to work in a costume. For me, I work that way. So on top of it, we layered motifs onto all the different cultures, and her character's culture is from Cairene. And Cairene is the women dressed a little 18th century French. And so we had the blue, and we had the French influence, and we had the shibori, which was the Japanese textile design that we gave the Cairene. So mixing all these three together, then we started to work on silhouettes. So working with Rosamund, she's got a terrific figure, and she's very tall. I actually have the tallest cast I've ever worked with. Everybody was tall. The women were tall. The men were all 6'4". It was brilliant because, I had a lot of canvas to deal with, and I just love it because height also helps me with costume, and they were all tall. So Rosamund and I worked, together to make Moiraine real. Moiraine had to be accessible and real. We couldn't put her on a pedestal. We needed to feel for her and be with her on this journey.
Yeah, it's really great. I noticed, I honestly did notice the height because she is so tall. I'm like, oh, they all look very, very
They're all
tall.
tall. It was fantastic. And I mean, maybe that was the brilliant casting director. I mean, I think they're all great actors. So I think that was first, but they just happened to all be tall, which is
Yeah.
great.
And then, and I guess briefly, I mean, was there for you, like, what was, I mean, in the show, what was the most like exciting one, most exciting costume maybe for you to like, bring to fruition, I guess? Or was there, anything that you were like, oh, I'm really excited that this paid off so well in the final version?
Because it's so varied, because we did like 5 cultures and 6 armies and a tribe and all these day play. I mean, it just went on and on. So every block we had a whole new culture to start with. And each time we would say, oh, this is our favorite. Oh, no, this is my favorite. Oh, no, I like this one now. So each time we moved through the story, we definitely kind of had a lot of fun right till the end. One of the groups, it's actually an army, it's called the White Cloaks. It's a little controversial, the White Cloaks, because you're not really sure if they're good or evil. They think they're good. Are they good? We don't know. And they wear white in the forest, and they kind of don't really battle well. And they're zealots, and they're a bit righteous, and they're witch hunters. And so it was a real mix and mash of different ideas of what the White Cloaks were. And they were cloaks. And so then we saw the White Cloaks. That's kind of like the Knights of Templar. So I didn't want to like shroud them in cloaks. Even though I feel they're a little clannish, I didn't want it to look like the clan. So it was a real tricky one. We went through a lot of versions. So I ended up putting a cloak and a cape together, kind of a mantle cape to create this, because they are on the horses, and you could see them move as they were riding their horses. Little ecclesiastic garb, because they're a little bit religious. They call themselves the children of the light. White Cloaks is actually a derogatory name for them. And then we took 380 meters of this fabric, because white was just too white, and we lightly printed chainmail on them. All the fabric is printed in chainmail. They're not wearing chainmail because they're not battling. They're wearing a little bit of armor, not full armor. That could come maybe another time. But yeah, I was really, when they're all in the forest and they're all around and they came out on their horses, it was quite striking. So I was very happy with that.
Yeah, I've seen some of that episode. It is really cool, and it is a very striking sequence, especially like you said, like having the white in the forest, in the environment. It's just like, it looks so cool on camera. So I think that's a great job on those costumes.
Thank you.
Cool. Isis Mussenden, costume designer for Wheel of Time on Amazon Prime Video this month. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris.